Hi, everyone. Welcome to this YouTube channel. My name is Dr. Kristen, and I am one of the good doctors of Abbey Research. We are empathy educators who are generally obsessed with helping everybody live together a little bit better and doing that work through stories. On the rest of our channel, you'll find everything from analysis of race relations in Bridgerton to our thoughts and feelings on the latest New York Times bestsellers. This series in particular is called Welcome to My World, where I get to spend about a half an hour, and therefore so do you, with somebody who is different than me, which is everybody, about one of the ways that they are different. I am so utterly privileged to have somebody who I've known for a long time, but we haven't been able to talk in a while. So this is a real treat for me too. Today with me is Dianna Anderson. Dianna is a non-binary queer writer out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. They're the author of 2 books, Damaged Goods and Problematic, both of which you'll find on our resource lists for their various topics, and is working on the 3rd, which will be out in fall of 2022 by Broadleaf Books. They hold a Master of the Arts in English from Baylor University in Waco, Texas, which is where we met, and a Master of Studies in Women's Studies from the University of Oxford in Oxford, England. While not working on books, Dianna works as a grant writer and a nonprofit development professional. They live with 2 cats, Minerva and Tonks. And yes, those references are what you think they are.
Yes.
So, Dianna, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
This is so much fun. So besides that wonderful intro, and yes, we'll remind you guys where their books are and how to order the next one when it comes out. But just, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Is there anything else we should know?
Yeah, I have been all over the world. I lived in between Waco and England. I lived in Chicago. I lived in Japan and stuff. So I've had the privilege of being able to be all over the place. And in that, I've also had the chance to experience some other cultures and to explore who I am in relationship to the rest of the world.
Oh, that makes sense.
And so over the past decade, I have been discovering things about myself. First, that I am queer. Which came as a little bit of a surprise, but then when I look back at my life, I'm like, oh yeah, that was there.
Yes.
And most recently, I came out as non-binary.
Okay, and let me be the voice of a whole lot of people that ask me this question, but what does that mean?
For me, that means that I don't feel like I fit into any of the gendered boxes.
Okay.
There tends to be what's called a binary of man and woman. They're 2 ends of a spectrum. And I felt like I don't fit in the box of woman, which is what I was assigned at birth, nor do I feel like I am a man. So I am in between. I am something else entirely. So I am non-binary.
Non-binary, is that the same as gender neutral?
Agender is what it's usually called, and that's somebody who feels like they don't fit into any gender. They would rather just not have a gender and stuff. And there is some overlap in that, but it's usually seen as a separate thing.
Fascinating, because I've definitely heard them used a little bit interchangeably. So, but my guess is these are all newer terms that we've been saying out loud in society. So we're all kind of figuring it out. Even people who are figuring themselves out, the rest of us are figuring out what words to use. So I know you've said on Twitter before that the best way to respond to not understanding what someone calls themselves is just to accept that they call themselves that.
Yeah.
And use the word they use. Is that still okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Very often you'll hear different variations on what pronouns people use.
Okay.
Because some of those are very personal things.
Right, of course, yeah.
So there are some people who use Swedish terms like "z" and "here."
Oh, is that where that comes from?
Yeah, it's Swedish. Okay. It's the neuter language in Swedish. And so they'll use that, or they'll use they them, which can be used as a singular and stuff. So yeah,
no, that's such a controversy and I was explaining that to somebody just the other day, that it is both plural and singular.
Yes.
And that historically it was actually singular for a really long time. I don't remember. I don't know if you studied this in your degree program, but like wasn't like the 18th century or something. We decided it was a singular, like we decided at some point or a plural. I'm sorry. Oh, fascinating. Okay. So in terms of, I guess this is the awkward question, but in terms of how you have to interact with the rest of the world, like what is different? Like, is there, like, I am absolutely I'm absolutely binary. I know
Mhm.
I am. And so
Yeah.
I interact with the world. Like I know what clothing stores I'm going to go to. I know kind of those things, and I navigate within the binary, certainly, but I'm still binary. So what has shifted since you moved from binary to non-binary in terms of how you interact with the world?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of gender that we experience in society is terms of how we perceive other people to be.
Right. Okay.
So there's a lot of, I am still very much perceived as a woman when I go out,
Right. Okay.
um, and stuff. So there's a lot of, when I like go to Target or something, people will assume that I am a woman and call me ma'am and things like that. And so
Right.
being non-binary means I either have to correct them in that moment or just sort of roll with it.
Okay.
And I've been working on changing my presentation so that I don't get perceived in that way.
Okay.
And stuff, wearing some more men's clothing, wearing some more androgynous
Okay.
sort of stuff. And I've had this short haircut for
I mean, almost as long as I've known you. Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah.
that's been a while. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so there was a time when I went longer, but then I cut it back because I didn't like it as long. And so there's a lot where like you just have to deal with how other people perceive you.
Yeah.
And I try to, when I talk to other people, not assume what their gender is.
Okay.
There is a Starbucks that I go to in Target nearby, and stuff. Whenever I'm shopping, I just stop and get a drink. And one of the baristas there is the nicest person ever. And I didn't want to assume their gender, even though they appear as male. And it turned out to be the right decision because later they told me their pronouns are they, them. And I was
Okay.
like, oh, hey, another they, them. And so
Welcome.
not assuming can be really good for a lot of people.
Yeah, I can see that. And yet I can also see that for a whole host of people, you're going to be the very first they, them they've ever met.
Yes. Yep.
And I can't imagine, I'm projecting onto you that that is a burden. Is that true or false?
It can be, because very often you have to explain and sort of defend yourself and defend your
Yeah.
gender, which can be very, very tiring and exhausting. And so I have one of my best friend is a binary trans woman. So she was assigned male at birth, and she feels that she's a woman. So she has transitioned to living as a woman. She is a woman.
Yeah.
And she is perceived as a woman wherever she goes. And stuff. So we were talking about this, and I was with her and I didn't correct somebody calling me she. And she goes, is that just because of the awkwardness of having to correct that every single time? And stuff. And it was like, yeah, at some point you just sort of say it's not worth the trouble of trying to explain.
And I'm sure too, yeah. And I'm sure too, there's some of us that have just known you in other pronouns that flip sometimes.
Yep.
And that's what I kind of mean where I think this is messy for everybody. But of course it's messier for y'all. I'm not trying to like center myself in this, but I want to make sure that the listeners understand that there is, that you're not crazy, that it's newer to be said out loud, but it is not a new thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Non-binary people, when I was studying for my next book, when I started doing all the research and stuff, I discovered that there are non-binary people going back centuries.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. In America, in a colonial America, there was a person who called themselves the Public Universal Friend. They were a Quaker person.
Yes, I've heard of them.
Yeah. Yeah. They're fantastic. They, at like 17, had this revelation that they were a prophet of God of some kind, and started dressing in more androgynous clothing, started wearing men's cassocks and stuff for preaching, and insisted on being referred to not necessarily as they, them, because that didn't really exist as a singular in their time, whatever, but like refused to respond to she, her pronouns or he, him.
Oh, okay.
And so insisted on just being called the friend or something like that.
Okay.
And that's a non-binary person, and they view that as part of their connection to God.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I know, just in fiction and in plays and in theater, we've been talking about androgyny forever, which is probably, I would imagine, for a lot of people, just the more comfortable word for non-binary.
Yes.
But androgyny is a little bit more about like outward presentation than inner orientation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, where
Okay.
androgyny is the performance of the gender, and non-binary doesn't necessarily mean androgyny to every person. I have a non-binary friend who leans very masculine, and stuff, but still like wears dresses,
Right.
and things. So they do that sort of gender confusion as well, where
Okay.
yeah.
And gender confusion is not a negative term.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It's
That's news to me.
deliberately presenting as something that makes a person go, wait, what?
Okay. Yeah, like messing with the rest of us a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. We deserve to be messed with. So
Yep.
us cishet folks deserve to be messed with a little bit.
Yes.
We need to be. So that makes complete sense. In terms of how, I guess, I mean, in ways that those of us who are cishet can support and be allies, I hate that word, but like help. I know that like making sure we put our pronouns in places to normalize pronoun use is important. Is that something you feel strongly about?
For me, as a non-binary person, I feel like it's a good thing when people do that. And stuff. For some trans people, they feel like it's a way of like they feel like they're outing themselves when they do that, which can be very awkward. So it depends on the situation. If you're in a situation where you're meeting a whole bunch of new people, say you're in like a group setting and stuff, it's fine to say name and pronouns and stuff if you want to share them. And stuff, or if you have certain pronouns that you like us to use, or whatever. But it's never a good thing to pressure somebody to share something if they don't want to, or whatever. And
I think that's the double-edged sword, because I understand like normalizing pronouns and putting them in. So they're in my Twitter profile, like they're on my, I'm happy to put them on my Zoom and and all of that. Also, just because for me personally, I have no skin in my personal pronouns. If somebody calls me, he, mazel, like it doesn't do anything to me. So I'm happy to normalize it in that way. But that's such a double-edged sword, because if we normalize it, there may be some people that want it to not be normalized.
Yeah.
And we're muddling through this together, I think.
Yeah, a lot of it is we're just figuring things out. And for like my cishet friends who who were accustomed to calling me she, and now are adjusting to calling me they, I tell them, it's okay if you mess up. It's okay if you call me by the wrong thing. I'm not gonna like end our friendship over that and stuff. But like if you want to make it a habit, practicing it really helps. Saying Dianna went to the store, they bought this, that sort of thing. Just in your head, out loud, in front of the mirror and stuff. And that will help you make that connection between that person and their pronoun and stuff when you have to adjust it.
Absolutely. And in terms of presentation, it is my just very first time in a one-on-one in-person relationship with somebody who is non-binary. Like they present as female. And I just and they have a female name, like a traditionally female name. And like, I was talking to them and they kept saying, like, I said, like I was referring to them in the third person. And they said, just very calmly, like, I use they, them pronouns. And I said, and I know that. And I just messed up and I'm so sorry. Like, and I felt mortified. And they said the same thing as you, just in the future, I would like just practice a little bit and it's not a great feeling, but we understand that it's weird. And I was like, it's not that you're weird. It's just that I've been conditioned for 36 years to see woman and think she, and that's the cultural conditioning that I've got to break.
Yes, exactly. I saw this last weekend, I went and hung out with some friends whom I haven't seen in person since like November and stuff, because of winter, because of the pandemic,
COVID, because of the COVID.
And afterwards, I got a text from one of them apologizing for misgendering me because like I came out in October, so it's been like they haven't seen me.
Mostly you've come out on the
internet. And stuff, and it was the same thing where I was just like, one, I hadn't even noticed it because it happened right at the end when we were saying goodbye, and two, I just told him, just practice it and it's fine. Like, we're friends. I'm not gonna like break up with you because I know you're not doing it out of maliciousness.
And that's such a thing. Like this is,
yes.
somebody asked me to ask you, by the way, what is the
Mhm.
difference between misgendering and dead naming? And
Yes.
my guess is that the intent is going to be a bit of a thing there. So would you mind unpacking that for
Yeah,
us?
absolutely.
Okay.
Misgendering and dead naming are related, but different things. Dead naming is when somebody has come out and changed their name. I have not, so Dianna is still my name. It's the name I publish under. It's the name I'm, for right now, still comfortable with. But for some people, they have, like, I have a friend who came out as a trans woman and changed their name to Emily. And even though I know them by their dead name, calling them their dead name would be very offensive, because it is saying, I still see you as a boy, sort of thing. Even though she is a woman, has been presenting as a woman for years
For
now.
years now. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I know who you're speaking of. And yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
years now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if I were to go and call her by her dead name, that would be saying that I don't think the new identity is valid.
Yeah.
Whereas misgendering is sort of, it depends on the situation. Like, I can tell when people who are anti-non-binary, anti-trans are deliberately trying to put me in a box,
Oh,
and
okay.
refusing to use that they them pronoun.
Right.
But like I said with friends, it's, they're used to calling me she, so I'm not gonna really be mad about that.
Yeah,
So.
it's so, when all of us are changing any kind of identity, or
Mhm.
whether it's a change or an evolution or a shift or whatever language people want to use,
Yeah.
there's always people who knew us before that.
Mhm.
And it's always a little bit messy. I think it just feels messier with gender right now because for the majority of the population it is so foreign. Like the idea
Yes.
is so, breaking the binary is so foreign, entirely because of our cultural conditioning.
Mhm.
So that's it. And then I think, just as a final kind of question, I want to circle back in those of us who I still identify with the binary, but know that the binary is bullshit. How can we be supportive of non-binary folks? What's the best way, do you think?
It's a little hard because things are so new and stuff, but
Fair.
for a lot of non-binary people, supporting transgender activist causes
Okay.
includes us in a lot of
Oh,
ways.
okay.
So supporting access to healthcare, because some non-binary people medically transition, some don't. We need to be able to have that access
Of
to
course you do.
healthcare.
Yeah.
And doing the normalizing pronouns, not assuming somebody's gender, that is situational, but it's a good thing to try and like normalize in your company or something like that. Because like, I feel good when I get a customer service email that somebody's put their pronouns in, because then I know I can say my pronouns are they them and they won't freak out.
It will not become a capital issue.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And basically just try to stop assuming, like when you're at the store and you see somebody at the cashier's aisle, don't ask them, what are you? Or whatever. Like, try to
Yes,
stop
that's a
assuming what a
great place
person's
to
gender
start.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And start, a lot of it is just changing your internal thinking of like, maybe I perceive that person as a woman, but they may not actually identify that way. So let people determine it for themselves. So.
I think that's a great word of wisdom, full stop. Like, what I perceive this person to be may not be what they really are, or may not be how they perceive themselves. And so less assumptions and more relationships are really where we need to come down to. Cause like I usually say, less assumptions, more questions. But again, this isn't something you need to question a stranger.
Yeah.
But more relationships, for sure. Everybody viewing this, please know all of Dianna's links are going to be below. And if you are a Twitter person, Dianna is one of my favorite follows on Twitter, largely because they get into fights with people I can't stand either. And I really love the vicarious anger, but legitimately also teaches me lots and lots about transgender and non-binary stuff that is just not my world. And so I don't dip into it very often. But here at Abbey Research, we talk about finding the voices in communities that you trust. And Abbey Research is one of ours in transgender spaces, is definitely Dianna's. So make sure to be following them, and watch out for that book that's coming soon. I will be pre-ordering it as soon as we can. And it's on the history and culture of non-binary.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Honestly can't wait, because I know so little, and I really can't wait. So Dianna, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a delight.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I can't wait until we do this in person post the COVID. So,
yes.
And everybody else, I will see you next time on Welcome to My World. Bye.
Bye.